Welcome to Classrooms Beyond Borders, a day in the life. I'm your host, Cami Cannikins. I'm an educator from Canada, and I know that access to quality education isn't a level playing field. In this podcast, we're going on a journey to explore the realities of schooling in less developed nations. Join me as we explore the real lives of teachers, students, and community leaders in less developed nations and discover how their experiences can challenge and inspire us all. Today, I am pleased to take us to Nigeria, where we are with Busayo Okewale, and she is from the southwest of Nigeria, I believe. So, Busayo, why don't you tell us a little bit about where within Nigeria you're located, and then tell us a little bit about the school and the classroom that you teach in.
My name is Busayo Okewale, a teacher from Nigeria, the southwestern part of Nigeria. I teach in Lagos State. Lagos State is a commercial hub, a major city in Africa. Precisely, I teach in the capital of Lagos State, Ikeja. I teach in a private international primary school, and I teach children ages 5 to 11 years old.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your school, your classroom? What does your school look like? What is it? How is it constructed? What would you find in your classroom? On your school grounds, do you have an area where students do athletics or where they're able to play? Do you have like a grass field or a dirt field? Or tell us about your school environment.
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, it's an international school that runs the British national curriculum in a Nigerian context. The school is about three-story building. A three-story building, a massive building. There is a large playground. There is a field where children can practice athletics, sports, and all of those things. There is a basketball court where children who are interested in basketball and other extracurricular activities get to express their gifts and talents. The classroom is large. We have large classrooms with about an average of 20 pupils in a classroom to 2 teachers. In the classrooms, we have the interactive panel. Each teacher has a computer. The children also have their computers, and there is access to internet facilities in the school. We have restrooms, good toilet facilities. We have the admin block where the administrative departments carry out their daily functions. So this is my reality because it's a private international school, and I don't know if I should compare now or just...
Well, you know what? I think that would be great if you could tell us what it would be like if you were working in a Nigerian school that wasn't a private international school. So if it was a school for Nigerian national children, I'm assuming it would be a little bit different. Would you tell us about that?
It's a lot of difference. I mean, it's totally different. Comparing the teacher to student ratio.
Yes.
Different. In the private school where I work, it's 2 teachers to 20. 2 teachers to 20. In most government-funded schools in Nigeria, we have about 60 to 80 pupils to a teacher. So most times the classrooms are overcrowded, and my classrooms are fully furnished, well furnished, compared to government-owned schools where you still find learners sitting on the floor, hanging around the window, no toilet facility. You see them just, if they need to use the bathroom, they do it anywhere they see. The hygiene level is quite poor in government schools. Most government schools do not have internet facilities. They don't have the internet facilities except for those in the capital cities. Majority of government-funded schools in the rural areas don't have access to internet. They don't have access to IT, so it makes differentiation really difficult, and the classes are really very large. For international schools, we are paid fairly. I mean, a little. The staff welfare is better than government-funded schools. And in government-funded schools, you have teachers earning less than $70. in a month, and it's usually very difficult to cope. So we have a number of them moving out of the government schools to private schools, those who are lucky, because we have just a few international schools in Nigeria. It's a whole lot of a different world entirely, I would say.
Well, and I think that is the case in most places, that the international schools are indeed an entirely different world. So you mentioned the staff pay or the wages, the funds that they would make is $70 a month. Were you giving us a US dollar equivalent there?
Yes, equivalent. Yes, yes. In Naira, majority with a first degree with a B.Ed, with less than 3 years experience in government-funded schools, and about 100 to 150,000 Naira.
And so you're talking even teachers that have their Bachelor of Education. So these are
Yes,
well
yes,
educated, well qualified teachers.
yes.
And I'm assuming that, as you said, that salary would be difficult, challenging to live off of as a teacher.
Yes, difficult, challenging, getting an apartment, getting to live a normal life, to live an average life, to live comfortably, to afford the basic things, basic necessity is quite difficult. So we have the challenge of teacher shortage, because nobody wants to stay in an environment where they can't even get a fair pay to take care of their families. So a number of teachers are really leaving the profession.
Well, that's certainly an unfortunate truth that happens when wages are so low. When your teachers would go to school then, so they have fairly low wages, they're working in a public school, they have to travel to get to school. How would they get to school? My guess would be that likely on those low wages, most would not have a private vehicle, a car that they would drive. How would they get to school?
Okay, some of them take the public transport, and because Lagos State is overpopulated, because people believe it's an urban area, we have a lot of congestion in Lagos State, a lot of traffic congestion. So it takes about 30 to 1 hour to some teachers have to struggle to get buses to work. In some areas in Lagos State, in Makoko area, teachers would have to travel on boats to get to schools. So it's a whole lot of stress.
So even just the act of getting to school is a difficult thing in a congested city like you
Yes,
have.
yes.
So let's compare maybe your school again and the public schools around what it might look like, as far as, do you provide any meals for the students in either situation?
Okay, yes. In my school, meals are provided. Of course, parents pay for this meal as part of the school fees package. So parents pay for these meals, parents that can afford, parents that would want their children to take food made from home do not have to subscribe for the school meals. But
Okay.
parents who cannot provide food from home, probably because of their busy schedule, will have to opt for the school meal, and it is paid for annually. However, in government-owned schools, meals are not provided. So the children have to bring meals from home.
And would you say that most students actually are able to bring a meal from home, or do they end up maybe going throughout the day without a meal? What does that sometimes look like?
Okay, most students are able to bring food from home. Most students are able, but sometimes it's a problem of quality. The quality of the food they bring from home, because of the economic situation of their parents. Some of them bring food, but not the balanced diets. Some of them bring food, but not enough quantity. So they have a choice of giving extra money to the children to get snacks from school. But parents who cannot afford it will tell the children to just take whatever they've been given.
Okay. What about the time of your school? What time of the day would school typically start at?
Okay, school typically starts 8 a.m. In my school, from 7:30 to 8 a.m., we have the assembly, the registration, and 8 a.m. classes start. So we start 8 a.m. and we close 2:45 p.m. Children who have registered for the extracurricular activities then go for the after school extracurricular activities from 2:45 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. In government-owned school, the school starts 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. on weekdays, on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m.
So you mentioned at your school extracurricular activities. What would some of those include at a private school like yours?
Okay, we have activities like basketball, we have athletics, we have swimming, we have foreign languages, we have dance, we have local languages, we also have the book club, we have, I think I've mentioned swimming. Yes, I think those are the major clubs.
Okay, so would students in a public school have access to any kinds of extracurricular activities?
No, government funded schools, it's majorly academics. So there's nothing like all those extracurricular activities because they're expensive
Right.
and it will be difficult for parents to fund them. And because government funding is limited, so they can't afford it. It seems like a luxury.
Well, yes, it certainly seems like it would be. You mentioned that in one of the extracurriculars in the private school was local languages. Are there lots of languages in your area? So, do students come to school, public or private school, do they come to school knowing English, fluent in English, or do many of them speak their tribal language? Tell us about how languages work in your part of Nigeria.
Okay, so many of the children in the government-owned schools, government advocates that children ages 3 to 8 should be introduced or should be taught with their local language before they are introduced to English language. However, implementation is quite difficult. Teachers find it difficult to implement this. In a private school where I work, we have children from China, we have children from different parts of the world whose first language is not English language. And there is an English immersion program for them. They are assisted to learn English and any other language they may be interested in learning. The local languages in the school where I work, we don't teach children with a local language. However, interested parents who would want their children to learn Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, the three major languages in Nigeria, are free to pay extra for the children to learn it.
So if there's three major languages and students in public schools are supposed to learn in one of those languages, how does that work? When you've got these students, do different schools have, like, this school teaches this language, this school teaches this language? Are they mixed? How does that? You said it's difficult to implement. Is that part of the
Okay,
difficulty?
yeah. Okay, the assumption is that Southwest, people from the southwestern part of Nigeria are Yorubas, people from the southeastern part of Nigeria are Igbos, and people from the northern part of Nigeria are Hausas. So it is expected that if you're studying in a school in the southwest, in a government school in the southwest, you should be taught in Yoruba from age 4 to age 8. If you're from the north, Hausa. However, in the southwest, we have teachers who are not fluent in the other languages. Even in Yoruba, we have teachers in different regions who are not fluent in the language of the region. So it is difficult to teach with the language of the region.
So then we'll just get taught in English if that is the case.
Yes.
And do students come to school knowing English fairly well, or does that vary? Tell us what that might be like, especially in a non-private school type student.
Okay, it depends on the level of education of their parents. Parents that are educated are able to speak English to the children at home. So some of them come to school with a little bit of knowledge of English language. However, parents who are not educated, who don't have the literacy level, only speak the local dialect to the children, and those children come to school with zero understanding of English.
So then we can imagine with 60 to 80 students in a class who don't know English, how much of a challenge that would be.
Yeah.
Do you find, I know as I've talked to teachers in other parts of Africa, that even as students get into the middle school and upper grades, many of them, even though the courses are in English, they still struggle in English. Might that be the case as well, as students go through the system, that they kind of know English, but they don't deeply know English? Or tell us how that might be.
Yes, English comprehension is another thing. They know English, but they don't know it in depth. they still struggle to answer comprehension questions. Even those that claim to know English, you give them a passage to read, to make predictions, to summarize. It's so difficult.
So they might have a spoken English, they might be able to converse and have a conversation. However, the reading and writing, and as you mentioned, the summary, the comprehension, all of those parts, that part they would struggle with. Now, you told us that in your school, you have great access to technology. You said you have interactive panels, that the teachers have computers and the students have computers, and that there was certainly hardly any, especially in rural areas in Nigeria. Is there anything else that you might be able to tell us about access to technology in Nigeria in general for schools?
Okay, in general, technology is not really accessible because of power. We have the power challenge. We don't have constant electricity supply, so it's difficult to maintain some of these gadgets. And these gadgets are quite expensive because of the economic situation of the country. A lot of people are living on survival mode. They just want to get the basics, eat, feed their family. They're not really thinking about getting expensive gadgets, so it's not really accessible. And talking about electricity, a number of people have tried to explore the solar option. However, it's still quite expensive. So only those who are very wealthy can afford the solar. So a number of teachers have their smartphones. A number of teachers, about 50 to 60% of teachers have smartphones in place of computers, and they can only do a few things. They are limited because of how expensive computers are.
Well, and so that's again something that have discovered is fairly typical, that computers aren't something that many teachers would have just because it doesn't make sense economically, especially when you can do so much on a smartphone. Busayo, can you tell us a bit about the electricity situation in Western nations, in Canada, the United States? We're used to electricity that is reliable, that it would be a rare, unusual situation if the electricity didn't work. But I know that electricity is not necessarily so reliable in other parts of the world. Can you tell us what that's like? Is it like scheduled outages, or is it unpredictable? How long does that last? How does that affect daily life?
Okay, it's getting better in Lagos State now. We still have some states in Nigeria that electricity is not available at all. They don't have it. They have to use generators. They get fuel and they use their generator. They don't have electricity at all. However, in Lagos State, we do have electricity, but the number of hours of power you have will be determined by your band. So some have electricity from 20 to 24 hours a day. They pay heavily for it. Some have in Lagos State, some have from about 10 to 15 hours daily. Some have less. So those who enjoy 20 to 24 hours electricity pay more than those who have less. So you can't tell when it goes off. You can't tell when it comes back. It's not predictable. So it's very unstable and it affects a lot of things. It's affecting businesses, it's affecting the schools, it's affecting so many inventions.
So I imagine even your school, even though you have the technology, you have computers, your students have computers, I imagine that you are still at the whim of the electricity, whether it's on or off. Is that true? Or do you
Yes.
have generators?
Yes, we do have solar. We have the solar power. So when the electricity goes off, we have an alternative. We have inverter. If power goes off, maybe for a minute or two, we get it back.
So you have
Yes,
backups in place at a school in your
yes.
situation. All right. One of the things we might touch on, especially be at your international school, where there is technology and students have access to computers. Are you doing much in the area of generative AI?
Okay, generative AI. I wouldn't say we are doing a lot. We've been integrating AI in teaching and learning. Now we'll let children do their research, find their answers, ask AI. Personally, have been using AI to generate assessments for my learners, to generate questions. I've been using AI to plan my lessons, to get resources, to get other ways of teaching a concept, ways of making a concept easier to teach. However, there is a challenge of safety, AI safety in international schools. A number of parents are they are scared. They don't want the negative impact of AI on their children. So we are moving towards, teaching children how to be safe, how to use AI safely in the school and at home.
Well, that's excellent to hear because that is an issue at schools across the world where just because AI is easy to use doesn't mean that teachers or students necessarily know how to use it safely. And that is a big push everywhere is teachers and students know about AI and how to use it safely. Your students are certainly very privileged to be able to have access and to have an opportunity to learn about it in that way. As we wrap up today, could you tell us what you might see as some of the biggest challenges for education in Nigeria in general in the times ahead?
Okay, the biggest is inadequate funding. Schools are not well funded. Even some private schools actually need funding from government. So the biggest is funding from government. The budget allocated to education should be increased and proper monitoring. Proper monitoring is something because in some of these government funded schools, teachers are left to do whatever they want. Nobody is checking, nobody is monitoring, nobody is training. So I believe that proper monitoring and supervision should be looked into.
So, in other words, you might be saying that even though there are schools in the public system and they have so many students per class, then on top of that, perhaps due to the low wages and other factors, the amount of education that's happening might not even be super beneficial just because there's such a lack of oversight.
Yes.
What are your biggest hopes for education in Nigeria?
My biggest hope is that equity. Every child should have access to quality education, regardless of their socioeconomic background. Every child should have access to quality education.
Well, and that is a hope for children around the world. Well, Busayo, I thank you so much for telling us about school in an urban area of Nigeria. And I know that from urban areas to rural areas, school can be so different. And from private school to public school, it's certainly helpful for us to get a picture of how different those two worlds can be. So thank you so much for joining us today to take us into the world of education in Nigeria.
You're welcome.
You have been listening to Classrooms Beyond Borders. We hope this episode has offered a valuable perspective on education in a part of the world that may be very different from your own. I hope these conversations spark a desire to learn more about the world, to engage with global issues, and to consider how you can contribute to more equitable and just education for all. Check the show notes to see if there is a specific suggestion for supporting the school in this episode. Join us next time for another journey beyond borders to another classroom with another incredible teacher. Subscribe to Classroom Beyond Borders wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube.